She was called cursed by everyone who knew her, but the truth was far more dangerous. In the winter of 1887, a cowboy named Samuel Thompson made a promise that would defy his entire world. He agreed to marry the outcast daughter of an Apache chief. On their wedding night, he discovered her terrifying gift, and in that moment, he understood why her own people feared her and why he would have to protect her from everyone, including them. This is the story of Anna, a young Apache woman born with a sacred gift of healing and foresight, a gift her tribe learned to fear, and of Samuel Thompson, a cowboy who wandered into a world he didn't understand, only to find a truth no one else would see. Their union would spark a conflict between ancient tradition and dangerous outsiders, forcing one man to stand alone against two worlds. To understand that wedding night, we must go back to the day they first met, 10 years earlier, in a canyon stained with blood. The red rocks of the New Mexico Canyon were baking under a brutal sun when 23-year-old Samuel Thompson first heard the screams. They weren't shouts of joy or celebration. They were screams of pure, animal terror. Spurring his horse toward the sound, Samuel crested a ridge and saw a sight that froze his blood. 3 Apache women were fleeing through the scrub, their elegant buckskin dresses tearing on the brush. Behind them, a war party of a dozen Comanche warriors closed in, their cries echoing off the stone walls. Samuel knew the stories. Capture meant slavery or a slow death in unfamiliar territory. He didn't think, he just acted. Galloping down the slope, he shouted the few words of Apache he knew. "Friends, help!" The women froze, fear turning to confusion as a white cowboy charged toward them. The tallest of the 3, a young woman with penetrating dark eyes and hair braided with turquoise, met his gaze. In that split second, a silent understanding passed between them. She shouted to her sisters and with impossible grace leapt onto the back of his moving horse. Samuel then created a distraction, drawing half the warriors away while the other 2 women ran for a labyrinth of rock towers he knew held a secret passage. What followed was a desperate chase, Samuel's horse laboring under the double weight as Comanche arrows whistled past his head. He led them into the maze of stone, his knowledge of the land the only advantage he had. In the shelter of a hidden crevice, breathless and covered in dust, Samuel finally faced the women he'd saved. The tall one with the turquoise beads was Anna, daughter of Chief Running Bear. Her sister, Kiona, was a fierce-eyed warrior. The youngest, Nayland, bore a small scar on her cheek. In broken Spanish, Anna thanked him. "You saved honor, you saved life." Samuel just tipped his hat. Named Samuel, and we're not safe yet. He devised a plan. The women would climb to a high ledge while he led the remaining warriors on a wild goose chase south, into confusing canyons they didn't know. As the women began to scale the rock face with effortless skill, Anna turned back. "Why help? You not Apache?" Samuel looked at the terror still lingering in their eyes, a look he understood from his own childhood of loss. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said simply. He didn't know that those 7 words would echo for a decade. 10 years passed. The solitude of the high desert settled into Samuel's bones. At 33, he traded adventure for the hard, quiet work of a small horse ranch. The memory of that day in the canyon had faded to a dusty legend, a tale of a younger man's bravery. His world was one of fence posts, thirsty soil, and the distant kindness of his neighbors, the Martinez family. He'd convinced himself this was enough, that the emptiness in his 2-room cabin was peace, not loneliness. But the desert has a way of testing a man's character. One evening, young Rosa Martinez galloped to his ranch, tears cutting tracks through the dust on her face. Bandits had raided her family's homestead and taken her grandmother, Lucia, hostage. They demanded the family's horses by dawn. Without hesitation, Samuel saddled his horse. He tracked the 5 men to a box canyon, used cunning instead of bullets, cutting their horses loose, creating diversions, and in a moonlit fight subdued them all with his fists, his lasso, and the butt of his rifle. He freed Grandma Lucia, who looked at him with wise, old eyes as they rode home. "You are a good man, Samuel Thompson," she said. "Someday someone will see that heart of yours." He just shrugged it off. A neighbor helps a neighbor, that was all. He returned to his empty ranch, unaware that his act of protection had sent a ripple through the territory, a ripple that would finally reach the one person who'd been waiting for a sign. A week later, 3 riders appeared on his horizon. They didn't ride like cowboys. They rode with the innate, elegant posture of those born to the saddle. As they drew closer, Samuel's breath caught. It was them. Anna, Kiona, and Nayland. But they were not the frightened girls from the canyon. They were women radiant and self-possessed, adorned in beautifully worked buckskin and beads that spoke of status. Anna dismounted, her Spanish now fluent. "Samuel Thompson, we have searched a long time." They had asked in every town and ranch, following whispers of a solitary cowboy until the story of the rescued grandmother confirmed it was him. From their saddlebags, they laid gifts at his feet, intricately woven blankets, painted pottery, necklaces of turquoise and silver. "This debt must be paid," Anna said, her voice firm with tradition. Samuel refused. "You don't owe me anything." Kiona stepped forward, her gaze direct. "Then do not accept it as debt. Accept it because we wish to give it." Then came the silence, heavy and profound. The 3 sisters exchanged a look, a silent conversation born of a decade of shared purpose. Anna took Samuel's work-roughened hand in hers. Her touch was warm, electric. "Samuel," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, "we have come to ask you to marry one of us." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Samuel stared, his mind reeling. Anna continued, her words measured and clear. "Each of us holds love for you. Each has carried you in her heart since the day you gave us back our lives. In our ways, a woman may court a man. We come together with honesty to present this choice." Kiona and Nayland nodded, their expressions serene but resolute. They explained he would have to choose only one, for marriage was between 2 people, but the unchosen would remain as sisters and friends forever. Samuel, whose entire adulthood had been a fortress against loss, stood utterly disarmed. The walls he'd built so carefully were crumbling under the weight of their sincere, astonishing offer. "I live alone," he managed, the words sounding hollow. "I am used to it." Anna's eyes softened. "Solitude is safe, Samuel, but it is not life." He looked at these 3 remarkable women who had traveled so far, not out of obligation, but from a place of genuine affection forged in fire. A strange feeling, long buried, stirred in his chest. Not just surprise, but a fragile, daring hope. "Stay," he heard himself say, "for a few days. Let me know you now, not as the man from the canyon, but as the man I am." And so they stayed. The ranch, once a place of quiet routine, transformed. Anna tended a patch of earth behind the cabin, identifying wild herbs and planting medicinal seeds with a knowledge that seemed ancient. Kiona worked with his horses, communicating with them in a silent language that calmed the wildest colt. Nayland filled the cabin with beauty, weaving patterns of light and shadow, her hands always creating as she shared stories of her people. Samuel watched, captivated, as 3 different visions of a future he'd never allowed himself to dream unfolded before him. He walked with Anna through the twilight, talking of simple things that felt profound. He laughed with Kiona as she challenged him to races. He listened, mesmerized, to Nayland's musical voice. But the choice loomed, a storm cloud on a clear horizon. He cared for them all, and the thought of causing pain was a knot in his stomach. Then the desert itself forced his hand. The sky turned a sickly yellow. A massive sandstorm was coming. As they scrambled to secure the ranch, Samuel saw a tiny figure on the distant plain, little Rosa Martinez, caught on her pony, directly in the storm's path. He and Kiona mounted up and raced into the thickening haze, finding Rosa thrown and terrified just as the full fury of the storm hit. The world dissolved into a roaring, stinging brown hell. Huddled in a shallow dip in the earth, Samuel shielded Rosa with his body, while Kiona pressed against them, a barrier against the wind. In that roaring darkness, holding on for life, Samuel's mind cleared. When he thought he might not survive, one face, one presence filled his mind's eye. Not the excitement of adventure, nor the comfort of beauty, but a deep, steadying peace. When the storm passed, they returned, dust-caked and exhausted. That night by the hearth, Samuel knew the time had come. The fire crackled as he faced the 3 women who had upended his world. "Kiona," he began, his voice thick, You are the free wind. To ask you to stay would be to cage a hawk. He turned to Nayland. You are a creator of beauty. I'm a simple man of soil and sweat. You deserve a canvas as vast as your spirit. Finally, he knelt before Anna, taking her hands. Anna, when I thought the sand would bury us, it was your face I saw, your voice I heard calling me back. With you, I am not just alive. I am home. Tears streamed down Anna's cheeks as she whispered, yes. As Kiona and Nayland embraced them both, promising to always be sisters, Samuel felt a chapter close and a terrifying, exhilarating new one begin. Preparations were made. Kiona left to become a tribal scout. Nayland departed for Santa Fe to join a community of artists. But they both returned 2 months later as promised for the wedding. The ceremony was held at the Apache camp, a fusion of two worlds. Chief Running Bear, a stern man with eyes that missed nothing, presided. The Martinez family attended, little Rosa beaming as a flower girl. There was feasting, dancing, and a fragile sense of celebration, but Samuel felt the undercurrents. While many smiled, others in the tribe averted their eyes when Anna passed. Whispers like dry leaves skittering across stone followed her. Cursed, the one who sees, bad medicine. Samuel chalked it up to superstition, to the strange tension of a mixed marriage. As night fell, he and Anna were led to a specially prepared wedding teepee, its interior glowing with firelight, decorated with fine blankets and ceremonial items. This was it, the beginning of their life. Anna entered first, a vision in her elaborate white buckskin dress, her hair flowing like a dark river. Samuel stood in the doorway, overwhelmed by her serene beauty and the magnitude of the step he was taking. He was about to step forward to begin his first night as a husband when Anna turned. She extended a hand toward him, not in invitation but in warning. Her eyes, reflected in the firelight, seemed to shimmer with an impossible internal light, and she spoke 7 words that would shatter his understanding of everything. "Samuel," she said, her voice echoing strangely in the small space. "Do not come inside. They are coming for us." Samuel froze in the doorway, the warmth of the fire a stark contrast to the ice now flooding his veins. "Who is coming?" he demanded, his hand instinctively dropping to where his gun usually hung, but it was back in the cabin, a world away. Anna stepped closer, the strange light in her eyes not a trick of the flames. It was a soft, silver luminescence from within. "Warriors from the north. They have been riding since the moon rose." She touched her temple. "I see their horses in the dust. I hear their thoughts hot with anger." This was the truth behind the whispers. Anna wasn't cursed. She was a *D in asterisk, a shaman, a seer. Her gift was a sacred thread connecting her to the spirit world, allowing glimpses of the future and the distant present. But years before, a vision she'd shared of a coming sickness had been misinterpreted as a cause, not a warning. The illness came, people died, and fear did the rest. The gift became a curse. Her own father, the chief, loved her but could not sway the deep superstition of his people. Marrying her to a brave outsider was his desperate attempt to protect her, to give her a life beyond the tribe's fearful gaze. Samuel's mind reeled. The pieces snapped into place, the averted eyes, the cold silences at the feast. How many, how much time? Anna closed her eyes, her brow furrowing in concentration. 12, maybe 15. They are angry about the marriage. They say it dishonors the tribe. They are half an hour away, no more. There was no time for disbelief. Samuel had seen this woman climb a cliff face to safety, had felt the profound truth in her touch. He believed her. "We run now." But Anna shook her head, a sad smile touching her lips. "They will follow. They have tracked me since childhood. My light is a beacon in the spirit world to those who know how to look. Running only delays." Samuel looked at her, this woman who was now his wife, standing serene in the face of a war party. A fierce, protective certainty roared to life inside him. "Then we don't run." He grabbed her hand. "We fight." But they were 2 people, one of them unarmed. Samuel's rifle was at his ranch. Their only hope was the wedding party itself. He and Anna burst from the teepee, shouting the alarm. Confusion turned to chaos. Chief Running Bear's face hardened into a mask of grim understanding. He had feared this. Kiona, the warrior, was already stringing her bow, her eyes blazing. Nayland began swiftly gathering the children and elderly. The Martinez family, caught in a world they didn't understand, huddled together. Samuel found the chief. "I need a rifle and men who will stand." The old chief looked at his son-in-law, then at his daughter. He saw not fear in Samuel's eyes, but resolve. He gave a sharp nod. "You have them." 20 Apache warriors, loyal to their chief and shamed by the renegade's actions, prepared for battle. Samuel, armed with a borrowed Springfield, took position behind a rocky outcrop overlooking the approach to the camp. He felt Kiona settle beside him. "For Anna," she said simply. He nodded. They didn't have to wait long. The thunder of hooves echoed through the canyon. The renegade band, faces painted for war, charged into the clearing, expecting a sleeping camp. They were met with a volley of arrows and gunfire. The night erupted in flashes of muzzle fire and screams. Samuel aimed with cold precision, not to kill but to wound and disarm, a cowboy's trick to stop a stampede applied to men. The fight was short, brutal, and decisive. The renegades, outnumbered and outmaneuvered, broke and fled into the darkness, leaving 3 wounded behind. As the dust settled, Samuel stood panting, the acrid smell of gunpowder in his nose. He had just fought members of his wife's tribe on his wedding night. There was no going back. In the cold light of dawn, the cost was clear. The camp was wounded both in body and spirit. The split within the tribe was now a chasm. Chief Running Bear stood before the captured warriors. Their leader, a fierce man named Red Hawk, spat at the ground between them. "You shelter the cursed one, and now you spill Apache blood for a white man's whore." Before Samuel could move, the chief struck Red Hawk across the face with the back of his hand. The crack was loud in the silence. "She is my daughter, his wife." Your *D and *. Your shame is that you fear a gift from the spirits. But the chief's shoulders sagged. He turned to Samuel and Anna, his voice heavy. "You must go. This quarrel is old and now it has blood in it. They will return with more. You have a ranch. Go there, be watchful." It was an exile, gentle but absolute. Anna wept as she embraced her father, her sisters. They had saved her life, only to lose her home. Samuel loaded their few belongings onto a wagon. As they drove away from the Apache camp, Samuel felt the weight of his new role settle upon him. He was no longer just a husband. He was a guardian, a protector of a secret the world was not ready to accept. Life at the isolated ranch became a wary routine. Samuel worked the land with one eye on the horizon. Anna tended her garden of medicines, her gaze often turning distant, listening to winds he could not hear. For a month there was peace. Then the visions returned. Anna would wake gasping from dreams of dark shapes moving through the arroyos, of strange men with papers and greed in their eyes. She spoke of a metal snake in the earth, a phrase that meant nothing to Samuel. He held her, reassuring her, but the dread was a constant companion. Their first real test came from an unexpected direction. One afternoon, a man in a crisp suit and a wide-brimmed hat rode up to their fence. He introduced himself as Agent Horace McAllister of the Federal Indian Bureau. He was polite, smiling, but his eyes were like 2 chips of flint as they took in the ranch. And then Anna, who stood silently in the doorway. "Mr. Thompson," McAllister said, tipping his hat. "Lovely spread you have here, and this must be the, Mrs. Thompson I've heard about." His tone made it clear what stories he'd heard. Samuel stepped between the agent and his wife. "What can I do for you, Agent?" McAllister's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Routine survey, son. The government is taking a keen interest in these parts, assessing land use, resources. You're on a rather desirable parcel, right near some suspected mineral deposits." He glanced again at Anna. "And married into local knowledge. That could be very useful." Samuel's blood ran cold. The agent wasn't just here for the land. He'd heard rumors about Anna's abilities. In a time when railroads and mining companies hungered for the West, a person who could see water or minerals would be a weapon. "Our land isn't for sale, and my wife's knowledge is private." McAllister's smile faded. "Everything is for sale, Mr. Thompson, and in matters of national progress, privacy is a luxury. Think on it." He tipped his hat again and rode away, leaving a silence heavier than any storm. The agent's visit was a fissure in their fragile peace. A week later, a shot rang out in the night, shattering their bedroom window. Samuel spent the next hour crouched in the darkness with his rifle, seeing nothing. It could have been a renegade Apache. It could have been a hired provocateur sent by McAllister to frighten them off their land. The not knowing was a poison. Anna, meanwhile, was retreating into herself, burdened by the constant stream of warnings from her gift. She began healing in earnest, using her herbs to treat sick animals and even venturing to the Martinez ranch to help Grandma Lucia with her rheumatism. The treatments worked with astonishing speed. Word began to spread among the scattered settlers of the Apache wife with the healing hands. This only increased the attention, a different kind of danger. Then, the final straw. Kiona arrived one evening, riding hard. Her message was dire. Red Hawk had gathered a larger faction. They were no longer just calling Anna cursed. They were calling her a traitor, her gift a weapon she would turn over to the white men to help them steal Apache land. They had issued an ultimatum to the chief: disavow Anna completely or face open rebellion. "They are coming, Samuel," Kiona said, her face grim. "Not to capture her, to silence her, for good." Samuel looked at his wife, who stood listening, her face pale but calm. They were trapped between two ruthless forces: a superstitious tribe that saw her as a demon and a greedy government that saw her as a tool. Protecting her meant not just facing warriors in the night, but challenging the very systems of power closing in around them. He had promised to keep her safe, but as he looked out at the darkening desert, he realized he was just one man, and the desert was full of enemies. He needed a plan. Not just to hide, but to fight back on a battlefield he didn't understand. The first move would be the most dangerous. He would have to go to the one place he was now a hunted man, the Apache camp. He had to confront Red Hawk, not with a gun, but with the truth. And he had to do it alone. Leaving Anna at the ranch with a loaded rifle and a promise to return by dawn, Samuel rode toward the Apache camp under a cloak of stars. He was a fool, he knew, walking into the heart of the people who wanted his wife dead, but he had no other weapon but the truth. He was met at the edge of the camp not by sentries but by Kiona. Her face was tight with worry. "He is waiting for you, in the council lodge. He has known you would come." Samuel's heart hammered against his ribs. This was a trap. Still, he followed her. Inside the large lodge, a fire painted dancing shadows on the faces of the men gathered. Chief Running Bear sat at the head, his expression unreadable. To his right sat Red Hawk, his arm in a sling from the wedding night fight, his eyes burning with hatred. No one spoke. Samuel stood in the center, feeling every gaze like a physical weight. Finally, Red Hawk broke the silence. "The white dog returns to beg." Samuel kept his eyes on the chief. "I haven't come to beg. I'm to ask a question. Who told you that Anna's gift would be used against the Apache?" The question landed in the stillness. Red Hawk scoffed. "The spirits whisper it, the land cries it." "No," Samuel said, his voice cutting through the smoky air. "Men whisper, greedy men. I met one, an agent named McAllister. He came to my ranch. He didn't ask about me. He asked about asterisk, about what she knows, what she can see. He wants to use her to find minerals, to take land." "Your land." He turned his full attention to Red Hawk. "Your anger is a weapon, Red Hawk, but who sharpened it? Who stands to gain if the tribe turns on its own *D and tears itself apart?" A murmur rippled through the lodge. The chief leaned forward, his eyes like chips of obsidian. "What proof do you have, son of my daughter?" Samuel had none. Only a gut feeling and the memory of McAllister's flinty eyes. No proof, only the truth that fear is a cheaper weapon than a rifle. "And I think someone is selling it to you." For a terrible moment, Samuel thought he had failed. Then an old warrior at the back of the lodge stood. "3 days passed," the man said, his voice gravelly. "I saw Red Hawk speaking with a white man near the dry creek. The man had a silver watch chain, McAllister." The revelation hit the lodge like a thunderclap. Red Hawk surged to his feet, his face a mask of fury and exposed guilt. "Lies, I speak to no white devils," but the damage was done. The seed of doubt was planted. Chief Running Bear rose, his authority filling the space. "Enough, Red Hawk, you will remain in the camp. We will discuss this." He looked at Samuel, a complex mix of respect and sorrow in his gaze. "You have shown courage. Now go, my daughter needs you." Samuel left, his body buzzing with adrenaline. He had bought time, maybe even an ally in the chief. But as he rode back through the pre-dawn gloom, a cold dread settled in his stomach. If McAllister was bold enough to treat with Red Hawk, he was playing a deeper game, and Samuel had just exposed his hand. He arrived home to a scene of chaos. The front door hung splintered on its hinges. Inside, the cabin was ransacked, furniture overturned, Anna's herbs scattered across the floor. But Anna was gone. Samuel's world narrowed to a single terrifying point. "Anna," he roared, stumbling back outside. A soft call came from the old stable. There, hidden beneath a pile of hay in the last stall, he found her. She was unharmed, but her eyes were wide with a vision-induced terror. "They came not long after you left," she whispered, clutching him. "3 men, not Apache. They tore the house apart. They were looking for notes, maps, anything I might have written down. When they did not find it, they argued. One said McAllister said the squaw herself is the map. They were coming for the stable when," she trailed off, looking toward the mountains. "When what, Anna?" "When the coyotes came," she said, her voice distant. "A whole pack singing. The men, they were superstitious. They fled." Samuel held her, his mind racing. McAllister had moved from intimidation to direct action. He didn't just want to scare them off the land, he wanted to capture Anna, to use her as a dowsing rod for riches. They were no longer safe anywhere. As they assessed the damage, Anna stiffened. Her eyes lost focus, the silver light flickering deep within them. She gasped, gripping Samuel's arm with painful strength. "The metal snake, I see it now. It is not a snake, it is a line. A black line on paper. A railroad." The vision poured out of her in fragments. Men with stakes and chains, a path cutting straight through the sacred Apache burial grounds in the northern hills, and their own ranch sitting directly atop a crucial mountain pass needed for the route. McAllister wasn't just a corrupt agent. He was a frontman for a railroad consortium. Removing Samuel and Anna wasn't about a simple land grab. It was about obliterating a hurdle to a fortune. And with the Apache tribe divided and fighting itself, no one would unite to oppose it. The scale of the threat suddenly multiplied tenfold. They weren't facing a bigoted faction or a lone, greedy official. They were standing in the way of the industrial frontier itself. 2 days later, the hammer fell. A formal notice was nailed to their fence post. It was an order of eminent domain from the Federal Land Office, citing the Transcontinental Western Railway Act. Their ranch was officially claimed for public use. They had 30 days to vacate. Compensation offered was a pittance. Samuel crumpled the paper in his fist. This was McAllister's masterstroke, using the law as a blunt instrument. If they resisted, they would be trespassers on government-seized land, and U.S. Marshals could remove them by force. That same afternoon, Kiona returned, this time with a bloodied lip and a furious glare. Red Hawk, humiliated and enraged by Samuel's accusation, had broken his confinement. He declared Samuel a lying provocateur and McAllister a useful ally against a common enemy, the witch and her white husband. He'd taken 20 warriors who believed his twisted version of events and left the camp. "They are coming here, Samuel," Kiona said. "Red Hawk promises McAllister he will remove the problem. In exchange, McAllister promises the railroad will bypass the sacred grounds. A lie, of course, but they believe it." Samuel stood on his porch looking at the 2 women. To the west, the legal might of the United States, embodied by men with papers and guns. To the east, a band of vengeful warriors fueled by superstition and manipulation. They were in the jaws of a vice. Anna touched his shoulder. Her voice was calm, eerily so. "There is a way, but it is not a way of fighting, it is a way of showing." She explained her idea. It was audacious. It was terrifying. It required trusting the very people who feared her most. They would host a gathering. They would invite the remaining, conflicted members of the Apache tribe, led by Chief Running Bear. They would also invite the Martinez family and a few other neighboring settlers. And they would somehow get a message to Agent McAllister inviting him to state his claim publicly. "We bring the battle here," Anna said, "to a place where bullets and lies cannot win. We show my people the truth of my gift, and we show McAllister that his secret is secret no more." Samuel stared at her. It was a colossal risk. It could be a massacre, but running was no longer an option. Hiding had failed. This was the only move left. "How do we show them?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Anna looked toward her garden where a particular plant with small blue flowers grew. "With medicine," she said. The next week was a frantic whirlwind of preparation. Invitations, carried by Kiona and Nayland, were sent. Samuel and Anna worked tirelessly, knowing their fate hinged on a single perilous demonstration. The morning of the gathering dawned clear and hot. By mid-morning they had arrived. From one direction, Chief Running Bear and 30 Apache men, women, and children, their faces cautious and closed. From another, the Martinez family and 2 other settler families, confused but loyal. They gathered in the yard between the cabin and the stable, an uneasy truce hanging in the air. Finally, a buggy arrived, kicking up dust. Agent Horace McAllister stepped out, dressed impeccably, a smug smile on his face. He was accompanied by 2 armed associates. He tipped his hat. "Mr. Thompson, quite the party, here to hand over the deed." Samuel ignored him. He helped Anna to a small, raised platform they'd built. She stood before the crowd, a slight figure in a simple dress, facing the sea of skepticism and hostility. She spoke first in Apache, then in Spanish for the settlers, her voice carrying clearly. "You are here because you are afraid of me, of change, of loss. My gift has been called a curse. Today you will see its nature." She nodded to the edge of the crowd. Grandma Lucia and a young Apache boy, known to be suffering from a persistent wasting cough, were brought forward. Anna had prepared 2 separate infusions from her herbs. She explained what each was for, speaking of balance and healing. She asked McAllister, as a government representative, to choose which patient received which tea to eliminate any trickery. Flustered, he pointed arbitrarily. The drinks were administered. The crowd watched in tense silence. For long minutes, nothing happened. Red Hawk, who had been lurking at the back of the Apache group, sneered. More witch tricks. Then the boy coughed, a deep, clearing cough. He breathed in deeply, a look of wonder on his face. The rattle in his chest was gone. Grandma Lucia slowly straightened, flexing her fingers, the constant pain in her joints seeming to ease. A palpable shockwave went through the assembly. It was one thing to hear rumors of healing. It was another to see it happen, simply and clearly. Anna then turned to McAllister. "Your railroad agent. It will go through the burial grounds in the North Canyon. You have known this for 6 months. You promised Red Hawk it would not, to buy his anger." McAllister's smile vanished. "Preposterous. You have no—" Anna cut him off, her eyes glowing faintly. "The surveyor's map is in your saddlebag. The path is marked in red ink. The canyon is called **** in my tongue, the place of whispering ancestors." McAllister went pale. One of his men instinctively stepped toward their horses. Chief Running Bear gestured, and 2 Apache warriors intercepted them, retrieving the saddlebag. The chief himself unrolled the map. There, clearly marked in red, was the route cutting through the heart of the sacred canyon. A collective gasp rose from the Apache side. Red Hawk stared, his fanatical certainty crumbling into confusion and dawning horror. He had been used. McAllister, exposed and cornered, dropped all pretense, his face contorted with rage. "You ignorant savages. That land is worth millions. That witch is a freak of nature, and you're all standing in the way of progress." He pointed a shaking finger at Anna. Take her now, or I'll have U.S. Marshals burn this whole damned valley to the ground." In the terrible silence that followed, Samuel stepped forward. He looked at Chief Running Bear, at the faces of the Apache people, at his settler neighbors. He spoke quietly, but every word carried. "You heard him. He calls your holy places ignorant. He calls my wife, your ***D and ***, a freak. He used your fear as a tool to steal from you. The enemy is not here." He pointed at Anna, then at himself. "The enemy is there." He pointed at McAllister. "And he is not alone." As if on cue, a new cloud of dust appeared on the horizon. Not warriors, but a column of riders led by a U.S. Marshal, McAllister's promised force, arriving early. The agent's smile returned, vicious and triumphant. The demonstration was over. The real battle was about to begin. The approaching column of riders, led by a stern U.S. Marshal, pulled the entire gathering into a standoff. McAllister, his face a mask of vindictive triumph, pointed at Anna. "Marshal, that woman is a known agitator and a threat to a federal project. Arrest her for interference." The Marshal, a weary-looking man named Pierce, dismounted and surveyed the tense scene. Armed Apache warriors, confused settlers, and a furious government agent. "I have an order here for the seizure of this land, Agent McAllister. My job is to enforce it." Samuel stepped forward, holding out the crumpled eminent domain notice. The order is based on a lie, Marshal. This man has been conspiring to incite violence to clear this land for his railroad partners. We have proof." He gestured to Chief Running Bear, who held up the red-marked map. McAllister spluttered. "That map is stolen property. These savages are lying." But the Marshal's eyes narrowed. He dealt with land agents like McAllister before. And the healing demonstration, the threats. Don Roberto Martinez stepped forward, his arm around his mother, Lucia. "We saw it, Marshal. This woman healed my mother and that boy. The agent threatened to burn the valley." A low murmur of agreement came from the other settlers. The Apache warriors, their loyalty solidified by the exposed betrayal of their sacred grounds, closed ranks behind their chief and Anna. They were no longer two separate groups facing each other. They were a united front facing a common enemy. In that moment, Red Hawk let out a guttural cry. He pushed through his own warriors, not toward Anna but toward McAllister. His face was twisted with shame and rage. "You used my fear, you made me a weapon against my own people." He turned to Chief Running Bear and dropped to one knee, a gesture of supreme submission. "My chief, my anger blinded me. I have brought dishonor. My life is yours." The chief looked down at him, then at the map, then at the Marshal. He spoke in Apache, his voice carrying the weight of a mountain. "Your life is not mine to take, Red Hawk. It belongs to the people you wronged. It belongs to my daughter." He looked at Anna. The entire assembly held its breath. Anna walked slowly to where Red Hawk knelt. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Your anger was a sickness, fed by a poison. I do not want your life, Red Hawk. I want your strength. Stand. Use it to protect, not to fear." It was a forgiveness he did not deserve, and it shattered him. He bowed his head, weeping openly. The gesture was more powerful than any vengeance. Marshal Pierce watched, his hardened expression softening. He'd come to evict a squatter and found a war he wanted no part of. He took the map from the chief. "Agent McAllister, you're suspended from duty. You'll be coming with me to Santa Fe to answer to the territorial governor about these allegations." He turned to Samuel and Anna. "As for this land, the order stands, but I'll include a full report of what transpired here. It'll be tied up in courts for years. You'll stay for now." It wasn't a victory, but it was a stay of execution. The immediate threat had been neutralized. McAllister was led away in disgrace. The railroad consortium, facing public scandal and legal challenges from a newly unified Apache tribe and settlers, would eventually reroute. The sacred canyon was saved. In the weeks that followed, a fragile new normal took root. Red Hawk, true to his word, became Anna's most fierce protector within the tribe, dismantling the faction that had feared her. The Apache and the neighboring settlers, having stood together, began a tentative, respectful trade. Samuel's ranch became a quiet hub of that exchange. Anna's garden grew larger, and she began training Kiona and Nayland in the ways of her herbs, passing on knowledge that had almost been lost. One evening, as Samuel and Anna sat on their porch, she placed his hand on her abdomen. Her smile was radiant. "The spirits show me a son. He will have your strength," she whispered. "And your eyes," Samuel replied, his heart full. The child, born the following spring, was named Elias. He had Samuel's straw-colored hair and Anna's dark, knowing eyes. The birth was attended by Grandma Lucia, Kiona, and Nayland, a weaving of worlds at the bedside. As the boy grew, it became clear he had inherited more than his mother's eyes. At age 3, he found a wounded bird fallen from its nest. He cupped it in his small hands, and by morning it was whole and flying. The gift was not a curse, but a legacy. Samuel and Anna taught him to see it as such, a responsibility, not a burden. Years later, an elderly Samuel and Anna watched their teenage son help Chief Running Bear, now a very old man, mount a horse. The tribe was moving to summer grounds. "You will visit soon, grandson," the chief said to Elias, who nodded with the easy confidence of a boy loved by two worlds. As the Apache band moved out, Samuel put his arm around Anna. The ranch was no longer a lonely outpost. It was a homestead, a meeting place, a testament to a love that had changed the very landscape. Anna rested her head on his shoulder. "You saved me, Samuel Thompson," she said softly. "No, Anna," he replied, looking at their son, at the thriving land, at the peace they had carved from chaos. "You saved us all." The story of the cursed bride and the solitary cowboy faded into legend. replaced by the truer story of the healer and her guardian, who taught a desert that the deepest magic is not in seeing the future, but in having the courage to change the present. Their legacy was not written in law books or on maps, but in the healing plants that grew wild on the hillside, and in the heart of a boy who would carry their peace into a new century. The story of Samuel and Anna Thompson is more than a frontier romance. It is a map of how fear transforms gifts into curses, and how courage can change them back again. For centuries, across countless cultures, women like Anna, healers, seers, midwives, and shamans, were revered, then feared, and finally persecuted. Their knowledge, often passed down through matriarchal lines, was suppressed by invading cultures, by new religions, by a world increasingly suspicious of power it could not control. What we label supernatural was often just a deeper understanding of the natural world, an attunement to rhythms and connections that modern life has taught us to ignore. Anna's tribe called her cursed because they could not understand her. The government agent saw her as a tool because he could not value her. Only Samuel, by choosing to see the woman instead of the myth, became her bridge back to humanity, and in doing so, found his own. This pattern repeats throughout history. The witch trials of Europe, which targeted female healers and wise women, the systemic dismantling of indigenous spiritual practices across the Americas, the marginalization of traditional medicine in the face of colonial science. In each case, a profound knowledge system was recast as superstition, its practitioners ostracized or eliminated. The real curse was never the gift itself, but the fear and greed it provoked in others. Samuel and Anna's legacy, carried by their son Elias, was a small but potent reversal of that ancient tide. It was a declaration that different ways of knowing can coexist, that healing is a universal language, and that protection does not always mean fighting with a gun. Sometimes it means fighting with faith. So we are left with a question that echoes far beyond the New Mexico desert. How many other curses in our own histories were simply misunderstood gifts? How much wisdom was lost because it arrived in a form that made us uncomfortable? The Thompsons' tale reminds us that the future often belongs to those brave enough to reinterpret the past, to look at the outcast and see a teacher, to face the unknown and choose curiosity over condemnation. Their ranch became a sanctuary because they dared to build one, proving that the most powerful magic is the everyday courage to build a better story. If you found this journey into the hidden layers of history compelling, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We explore the forgotten truths and untold stories that shape our world, uncovering the real people and events behind the legends. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep looking deeper.